Yunzi gritted his teeth, and with a flick of his right hand on the battle calligraphy, his divine sense merged into it. Instantly, one of the 15 Luofu blood orbs exploded, transforming into a blood body that directly collided with the approaching elder from the cultivation star. At this moment, a towering giant demon from the giant demon clan, standing at 1,000 feet tall, strode forward with thunderous steps. Wherever it encountered Luotian cultivators, if they were weaker, it simply grabbed them with one massive hand, crushing them with a roar and swallowing them whole. This 1,000-foot-tall giant demon had reached the peak of yang fulfillment, yet its physical body was terrifyingly strong, allowing it to absorb heaven and earth primordial energy at a rate many times greater than ordinary cultivators. Although its cultivation was at the peak of yang fulfillment, it was powerful enough to challenge an early-stage glimpse of nirvana cultivator. Especially considering its bodily strength, it was impervious to most magical artifacts. Charging forward, it headed straight for Yunzi atop the ancient tree. In its eyes, there was no clarity, only a hazy, chaotic madness. He's going to self-destruct. A soft, melodious voice sounded in Wang Lin's ear. It was the woman in the palace dress, calmly gazing at the approaching giant demon, whispering. Wang Lin nodded and glanced at Yunzi's primordial spirit, which was clearly in the process of recovering, preparing for the next transformation into a blood body technique. However, it couldn't be disturbed now. Still, Wang Lin didn't believe that Yunzi had no backup plan. But now was not the time for probing. The giant demon was drawing nearer. With a flash in his eyes, Wang Lin said calmly, "I'll handle it." With that, he took a step forward, directly facing the speeding giant demon. The woman in the palace dress smiled gracefully, her composure unwavering even amidst the chaos. She tucked a lock of her black hair behind her ear and smiled at Wang Lin. "Be careful, Taoist Su." Wang Lin stepped off the ancient tree, leaving the influence of the strange force within it. Instantly, the roar of battle and the tumultuous noise from the surrounding clashes filled his ears. As the 1,000-foot-tall giant demon closed in, its roar felt like a sonic boom, directly assaulting his senses. The giant demon from the giant demon clan moved faster and faster, a crazed, destructive aura growing more intense with every step. In the blink of an eye, it was upon him. The giant demon raised its right fist and roared, "Retreat." The fist came like a gale, but despite the violent wind crashing against him, Wang Lin didn't even budge a single step. His expression was cold as he struck out with his own fist, without hesitation. What followed was an incredibly strange sight. The giant demon's fist was enormous, and Wang Lin, in front of it, seemed like an insignificant ant. His own fist was almost negligible in comparison. However, as their fists collided, a deafening roar filled the air, intensifying, louder and more violent with every moment, as if the sound itself was building up for the eventual collision of their fists. Their fists drew closer. The explosive roar drowned out all other sounds, and those nearby cultivators, their ears ringing from the overwhelming noise, could only watch in awe as the two fists collided with a thunderous crash. The shockwave reverberated around them, causing many cultivators to retreat in fear. All eyes turned towards the battle between Wang Lin and the giant demon. The giant demon's body trembled violently as an unimaginable force flooded through it from Wang Lin's seemingly tiny fist, like a tidal wave. With a great spray of blood, its right fist exploded in a burst of flesh and bone. A pained roar escaped the giant demon as its body began to collapse under the tremendous force it had never encountered before. It was sent reeling backward, its body rapidly disintegrating. The giant demon's eyes filled with madness. In an instant, a destructive aura emanated from within it, and the entire being self-destructed. The self-destructive force of a peak yang fulfillment giant demon was formidable, especially with the explosive power of the giant demon's body. Even Wang Lin could not remain unaffected, and his brows furrowed. Wang Lin's face flushed slightly, but his eyes grew colder. He forced out a mouthful of blood to prevent suspicion before making a quick hand gesture and pointing to the heavens and earth. With a stern shout he commanded, "Summon wind." As soon as these words were spoken, a gust of black wind suddenly appeared from Wang Lin's right hand, sweeping across the area. It transformed into endless howling black wind, within which two black dragons surged forth, heading straight for the giant. They spiraled around its body, continuously devouring it, releasing a chilling wind capable of extinguishing the life flame. The wind summoning art was incredibly powerful. The shockwave from the black dragons pushed the 1,000-foot-tall giant backward with relentless force. In the blink of an eye, the giant was driven far away. Even more astonishing, the two black dragons actually consumed the giant demon clan's giant, weakening the explosion's power to an unimaginable extent. Boom. With a deafening sound, the 1,000-foot-tall giant from the giant demon clan self-destructed. The shockwave spread out, catching the attention of all the surrounding cultivators. Even some of the ancient experts engaged in battle paused to glance over. Wang Lin's face grew slightly pale, and his body staggered as he retreated to the giant tree, appearing as though he had been injured. In reality, killing a 1,000-foot-tall giant from the giant demon clan was no challenge for someone like Wang Lin, who had the ancient god body. On the giant tree, the woman in palace attire smiled and said, "Friend Su's divine abilities are truly impressive. Especially the technique that instantly refines the body, it's truly astonishing." Lai Yunzi's primordial spirit opened its eyes at this moment, showing appreciation. He nodded silently without speaking. Instead, he pointed at the second battle calligraphy scroll beside him, and immediately, his immense divine sense poured out, merging into the scroll. In an instant, one of the 14 Luo Fu blood orbs rapidly contracted, forming a dark red blood avatar without collapsing. This avatar carried an overwhelming divine power, causing the blood of anyone who came into contact with it to feel as if it were reversing its flow. The avatar took a step forward, heading directly towards the elderly cultivator from the Alliance who was fighting alongside another blood avatar and a young man in white on the cultivation star. In the distance, the woman in the water silk blue dress furrowed her brows tighter and tighter. With a delicate gesture, she pointed forward, causing two other 1,000-foot giants to step forward. One headed straight for the Luofu above, while the other charged toward the towering ancient tree. As the giant demon clan warriors approached, the elderly cultivator on the cultivation star immediately flew into the air, performing a hand seal before pressing his right hand down into the void. At once, the cultivation star between the elderly cultivator and the giant demon clan warriors began to spin rapidly, sending out waves of energy that spread across the area. The elderly cultivator murmured under his breath, and in a split second, he thrust his hands forward, shouting, "Star fluctuation." As soon as the words were spoken, the cultivation star immediately shot up into the air, spinning faster and faster. Yet, as it rotated, it began to shrink, quickly reducing to half its original size. Simultaneously, a crimson ripple spread out from the cultivation star. At the elderly cultivator's command, the ripple shot forward with unimaginable speed. This crimson wave was so fast that some of the Luotian cultivators nearby were caught in its path. They trembled, and in an instant, their bodies, along with their storage pouches, were all shattered. The ripple raced toward the towering ancient tree. Wang Lin's expression changed as he stood atop it. Lai Yunzi's eyes flashed with intensity as he shouted, "Sumu, Ziyin, quickly disperse and fight separately. Do not protect me." Without needing any further prompting from Lai Yunzi, Wang Lin immediately sped off, quickly retreating. He passed through the layers of the ancient tree, using a teleportation technique to move far away. The woman in palace attire did the same, retreating immediately. Just as they both left, the crimson ripple drew near. Lai Yunzi's primordial spirit enveloped his body, performing a strange hand seal. In that instant, his spirit and body merged into the ancient tree, disappearing without a trace. The crimson ripple struck the towering ancient tree, sweeping across it. Wang Lin, now far away, avoided the ripple. However, the surrounding area was chaotic with battle. As soon as he appeared, an Alliance cultivator immediately lunged at him with a sword strike. Wang Lin's eyes flashed coldly. He didn't evade. As the flying sword struck his body with a loud bang, it was deflected. He turned swiftly, pointing a finger at the attacker. This finger contained primordial energy, and within it, the power of the ancient god. It landed directly on the attacker's chest. The attacker's eyes filled with terror, and just as he attempted to retreat, his body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. His primordial spirit tried to flee in panic, but was immediately crushed by another Luotian cultivator in the distance. The Luotian cultivator's face was filled with murderous intent as he looked at Wang Lin, licking his lips. In a raspy voice, he said, "Sumu, shall we compete again and see who kills more?" This Luotian cultivator was none other than the Xun'er immortal Su Ting. Wang Lin's expression remained calm as he replied, "If we were to compete, it would be better to see who can kill that woman." Wang Lin then pointed to the woman in the water silk blue dress in the distance. Su Ting froze, his expression fluctuating between dark and light. He gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, let's compete on that. You and I will go together and see who succeeds." The woman was clearly someone of high status, otherwise, she wouldn't be overseeing such a fierce battle. However, her cultivation was not very profound. She appeared to be at the mid-glimpse of Nirvana stage. There were too many cultivators around, and amidst the chaos of combat, divine abilities filled the air. Flying swords and various magical artifacts emitted sharp, piercing cries. Su Ting, who had a bloodthirsty nature, struck mercilessly whenever he encountered cultivators weaker than himself. This slowed his pace slightly. Having cultivated for over 1,000 years, Wang Lin understood Su Ting's intentions clearly. He didn't expose him, nor did he resort to the same delaying tactics. Instead, he maintained his speed, weaving through the crowd and gradually drawing closer to the woman in the blue water gauze skirt. Amid the chaos, the woman in the blue water gauze skirt noticed Wang Lin and Su Ting's actions immediately with her clear gaze. She remained calm, not glancing at Su Ting, but instead, her cold eyes fixed on Wang Lin. Wang Lin's speed increased, weaving through the cultivators around him. In no time, he was within 100 feet of the woman. With a long laugh, he clenched his right fist and launched a powerful strike. This punch struck the void, immediately causing a rumbling sound and creating countless ripples that expanded outward, transforming into a storm that roared toward the woman in the blue water gauze skirt. Wang Lin's figure did not pause for a moment. He followed the storm closely, charging forward without hesitation. Not far from Wang Lin, Su Ting's eyes flashed with a cold smile. He paused for a moment, and, instead of continuing forward, he retreated sideways. A look of mockery appeared in his eyes. Su Mu, after all these years of cultivation, you only have this little bit of cunning. This woman clearly holds a special status within the alliance, or she wouldn't be overseeing this battle. Although her cultivation is not high, there must be strong protectors by her side. You're trying to lure me into killing her? Do you really take me for a 3-year-old child? Let's see how you get out of this. He stared at Wang Lin, who was getting closer to the woman, his cold smile deepening. Wang Lin's speed did not slow down at all. The storm howled, shaking the heavens and earth as it neared the woman in the blue water gauze skirt, now only 10 feet away. The woman's eyes flashed with cold light. She knew the giant demon under her feet would probably not be able to stop him, but there was no panic in her heart. Calmly, her left hand pressed downward into the void. In that instant, the cultivation star the giant demon was carrying trembled. It began to spin at an unbelievable speed, and crimson ripples suddenly spread outward, rapidly expanding. These crimson ripples contained a destructive force, and as they spread, the cultivation star visibly began to shrink at a shocking rate. The storm that Wang Lin had unleashed was immediately swept away by the crimson ripples. With a resounding boom, the storm collapsed and disintegrated instantly. Unhindered, the crimson ripples quickly spread toward Wang Lin. Su Ting watched this scene with great excitement, secretly thinking that Su Mu was hopeless. If he could die here, it would indeed be a fortunate event. But just as he reveled in this thought, he saw Wang Lin suddenly turn around when the crimson ripples were almost upon him. Wang Lin gave him a half-smiling, half-resentful look. The moment their eyes met, Su Ting froze. Not good. Su Ting, confident that he understood Wang Lin, could not believe his eyes. At the moment of life and death, Wang Lin's expression was entirely unexpected. His heart trembled as he realized something was wrong. In that instant, a large cauldron suddenly appeared around Wang Lin, its deep echoes reverberating. Wang Lin, with his right hand like the wind, pointed at Su Ting and shouted, "Swap positions." In the blink of an eye, a terrifying force surged outward from Su Ting's body, sending his soul into a panic. He had no time to react, and the power was so immense that he couldn't resist. As the power spread across his body, it felt as though time itself had stopped. In that moment, the crimson ripples were less than a foot away from Wang Lin, but his body had swapped places with Su Ting in an instant. It was as though the world itself had turned upside down. In the next breath, time seemed to resume its normal flow. In reality, everything had happened so quickly that Su Ting only perceived a blur, as if it were a mere illusion. When he regained his senses, terror filled his entire being, and every hair on his body stood on end. His vision was entirely consumed by red, and in his shock, he had no time to think. He immediately formed hand seals, and his immortal essence surged wildly from his body. His form shrank into a ball, and in the blink of an eye, over 100 layers of protective barriers formed around him. These barriers, made from his immortal essence and enhanced by the defensive immortal arts of the Eastern Su clan, caused Su Ting to appear like a sun surrounded by layers of golden halos. Just as the 100 layers of protection appeared, The crimson ripples charged toward him in a frenzy. Boom, 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 boom. The crimson ripple surged like a giant wave, crashing down with such force that within an instant, over 100 layers of protective barriers around Su Ting's body collapsed with a thunderous sound, more than 30 layers breaking apart in an instant. This scene sent a chill down Su Ting's spine. He did not remain still. Instead, he constantly retreated. But with each step back, the crimson ripple's impact shattered more of the protective layers around him, dozens of them crumbling at once. Sumu! Su Ting roared, his voice filled with a hatred so intense it reached its peak. The crimson glow's speed was clearly faster than Su Ting's, and despite his continuous retreat, the wave still caught up, crashing through his body in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. As the crimson ripple pierced through Su Ting, every single one of his defenses collapsed. Even his physical body seemed to be pulled apart, on the verge of shattering. In the split second of his defenses breaking down, Su Ting quickly pulled out over 100 jade slips from his storage pouch, not allowing himself the time to mourn their loss. He crushed them all in an instant, and immediately, hundreds of different colored barriers appeared around his body. At the same time, he summoned numerous magical artifacts from his storage pouch, one after another, to resist the oncoming attack. But as soon as these barriers appeared, they all shattered, and the magical artifacts also crumbled into pieces. Despite this, the crimson ripple began to weaken, as Su Ting's repeated resistance drained its power. After all, the wave wasn't a concentrated beam but rather a scattered force, dividing its strength among many. Even so, it was not enough for Su Ting to withstand it. He had already consumed a large amount of immortal essence and thrown out numerous magical artifacts. Seizing this moment, Su Ting spat out a mouthful of blood, which contained his immortal essence. The blood enveloped his body, forming a crimson aura as he rapidly retreated, putting more distance between himself and the crimson ripple. If this wave had struck him with full force earlier, even if he had used the blood escape technique, there would have been no guarantee he could have escaped. But now, as the wave was gradually weakening, he saw his opportunity. The blood escape technique was a last resort. He truly did not want to use it on the battlefield, but in this situation, it was his only choice. As he retreated using the technique, everything had happened in just a few breaths, yet the danger was no less than the time he fought against Wang Lin at the threat of heaven. The hatred in his heart towards Wang Lin was beyond words. As he retreated, he roared, "Sumu, you." He had intended to use his shout to expose Wang Lin's actions, hoping that the cultivators from Luo Tian and those old experts would begin to doubt Wang Lin. However, before his words had fully left his mouth, they were interrupted by a long, booming laugh. It was Wang Lin, who, as Su Ting was retreating, stepped forward, charging straight towards the crimson ripple. At the same time, Wang Lin laughed loudly. "Dao friend Su truly trusts people. Since you voluntarily assisted me in weakening this crimson ripple, I, Su Mu, will not forget it. If I manage to kill this woman, you shall be credited with the primary achievement." As Wang Lin spoke, his speed was incredibly fast. The ripple from earlier had already been weakened after Su Ting's contact. At this moment, Wang Lin formed a sword gesture with his right hand, and with his ancient god physique and the frenzied operation of his primordial energy, the yin-yang fish Dao concept materialized on his fingers. With a powerful thrust, his fingers directly collided with the crimson ripple. Boom! With a massive explosion, Wang Lin charged straight into the crimson ripple without any obstruction. Su Ting watched all of this with fury burning in his eyes, but the stress of the situation caused the blood light around his body to collapse. He stumbled backward, filled with rage, and his mind was rattled. He spat another mouthful of blood. This second mouthful of blood cleared his mind, suppressing his anger. A cold, sinister look appeared in his eyes as he immediately retreated without a second thought. Wang Lin sighed inwardly, thinking that Su Ting was indeed a capable person. Though anger had clouded him for a moment, he eventually regained his composure. Otherwise, it might have been a pleasure to have this person removed by someone else's hand. Wang Lin never forgot that even though Su Ting's main body had been killed back at the threat of heaven, a trace of his original essence remained. Half of the power of his origin had been retrieved. Not wanting to think about Su Ting further, Wang Lin charged into the crimson ripple and focused on the woman in the water silk blue dress, who was a few dozen feet away. As he raced toward her, he formed a seal with his right hand and pointed to the sky. Immediately, a black wind howled across the sky, forming a black vortex around him. This vortex was extremely dense, and as it swept through, two enormous black dragons emerged from within, roaring as their massive heads lunged toward the woman in the water silk blue dress, attempting to devour her. The woman's expression remained icy, but when she looked at Wang Lin, her gaze became complex. "You do not recognize me, but I recognize you." She sighed inwardly, casting a glance at the 8-leaf lotus platform on her right hand. She plucked one leaf from it with her left hand and tossed it forward. As the lotus leaf flew through the air, it immediately emitted a faint fragrance and quickly expanded, reaching several dozen feet in size, gently descending toward Wang Lin. Boom! A tremendous shockwave spread from all directions within a radius of several hundred meters around Wang Lin. The starry sky where Wang Lin stood seemed to be enveloped in a powerful pressure, and everything within 10 meters of him began to collapse under its weight. Cracking sounds erupted beneath his feet as large fissures appeared in the starry sky. His body felt as though an immense force from above was descending, attempting to crush him into the void within the starry cracks. Wang Lin's pupils contracted, and a heavy pressure descended from the sky. Under this pressure, he immediately felt the flow of his primordial energy was being obstructed. A black whirlwind howled around him, with 2 black dragons roaring within it. They suddenly darted towards the lotus leaf descending from the sky, releasing gusts of wind. But the lotus leaf showed no sign of slowing down as it rapidly descended. More and more cracks appeared in the void beneath Wang Lin's feet, and chilling air surged outward. In an instant, the 2 black dragons, along with the mighty whirlwind, collided with the lotus leaf. There was a loud crash. One of the black dragons trembled violently and immediately shattered, turning into countless black wisps that were pushed back. The other dragon, roaring, unleashed a wave of wind, but it had no effect on the lotus leaf, which absorbed all of it, exuding a faint green glow. The green glow spread, and the pressure became even heavier. Even the black whirlwind around Wang Lin disintegrated under the force, scattering into countless black wisps that permeated the surroundings. What kind of magical artifact is this? Wang Lin's eyes gleamed as he stretched out his arms and shouted softly, "Rain summoning." This was the first time Wang Lin had truly used the second form of the Immortal Emperor by Fan's immortal art, the rain summoning technique. The moment he spoke the words, it felt as though the primordial energy in the world was stirred by invisible hands and began to rapidly condense towards him. A thin mist appeared around Wang Lin's body, and with a shake of his hands, the surrounding black air seemed to be infused with new energy. It immediately formed into a vortex that spun violently around him. Raindrops began to form within the black vortex as the energy of heaven and earth mixed with Wang Lin's immortal essence. Each drop held enormous power. The swirling vortex also emitted faint traces of immortal chi, giving Wang Lin an ethereal appearance, resembling an immortal. His arms were outstretched, floating in the starry sky as the surrounding vortex spun at breakneck speed. Raindrops gathered and fell around his body, shining with a dazzling light. From a distance, it was a stunning sight. In that instant, Wang Lin thrust his hands forward. The vortex surrounding him trembled and, with a reverse motion, it let out a deafening rumble before shooting into the sky. It looked as though a massive vortex, 100 meters wide, had risen from the ground, attempting to connect heaven and earth. The thunderous sounds echoed as the vortex soared upwards, engulfing Wang Lin within, leaving only a faint silhouette visible. As the vortex rose, thousands of raindrops shot out, creating a relentless howling sound. It felt as if the earth had become the sky, and the rainwater was being birthed from the ground. Under the reversed flow of heaven and earth, the rainwater was heading towards the farthest reaches of the heavens. A glint of thunder flickered in Wang Lin's eyes, but he suppressed it, unwilling to reveal too much of his true cultivation at this moment. As the vortex ascended, the raindrops, along with the wind, soared towards the descending lotus leaf. First, the vortex approached the lotus leaf, and a sweeping motion caused it to tremble. Then, thousands of raindrops surged forward, each impact ringing out as the leaf shattered under the onslaught. The shockwave from the destruction spread outward, scattering in all directions as the vortex and rain ravaged the area. The pressure around Wang Lin eased, and he stepped forward, his hands forming a seal as he pointed towards the woman in the water silk blue dress. Immediately, the vortex and raindrops formed by his rain-summoning technique swept towards her. At that moment, from a distance, the black fiend demon Venerable, who was in battle with the blood god and the blood avatar formed from the Luofu blood orbs, was clearly losing ground and retreating. In a flash, he came rushing towards Wang Lin. Wang Lin's eyes flickered, and without hesitation, he retreated. His intention was not to truly harm the woman but to appear as though he had tried his best in the battle. At the very least, Xun'er had done his part. Moreover, with his previous merits, everything could be overlooked. As he retreated, the woman in the water-silk blue dress's eyes flashed coldly. She raised her right hand, and the seven-petal lotus platform pointed forward, summoning a phantom lotus flower that appeared before her. The rain summoning technique was blocked by this illusionary flower. She glanced at the battlefield, and while the situation seemed unfavorable for the Alliance, she remained calm. She knew the real battle had not yet begun. This was just the prelude. Raising her jade hand, she formed a seal and pointed into the void, whispering, "Please, Bone Prison Realm." As soon as the words were spoken, a vast array instantly appeared in the empty space ahead, silently and without warning, covering a 100-mile radius. The array was inverted, hanging in the starry sky, and once it manifested, it spun rapidly. Waves of purple-black energy poured out wildly, and in the blink of an eye, a purple iron chain suddenly fell from within the formation. Below it, a Luotian cultivator was unable to dodge in time and was struck by the iron chain. With a tragic grunt, his physical body immediately collapsed, and his primordial spirit could not escape, being directly trapped within the chain. From a distance, it could be seen that the cultivator's primordial spirit seemed to stick to the chain. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't break free. Another iron chain extended from the formation, shaking as it fell. Soon, more chains appeared one by one. In just a moment, over 100 chains swept out in all directions. At that moment, a deep roar came from within the formation, a sound filled with a tearing sensation. It felt as though the primordial spirit was being torn apart by two giant hands. In that instant, a figure stepped out of the formation. As soon as he appeared, a terrible stench of decaying flesh filled the air. This person was Tin Zhang Tall, his body purple-blue, and he was not a living being, but a corpse. This corpse was wrapped in countless iron chains, the same chains that had fallen from the formation earlier. This corpse was not naturally formed, but was crafted through the fusion of countless bodies using divine arts. Within the Cultivation Alliance, it was called a refined corpse. This creature had been created with bodies provided by the corpse insect, refined in the Bone Prison Realm. Over the past several millennia, only 18 such corpses had been created. Each of these corpses possessed cultivation equivalent to the late glimpse of Nirvana stage. The first refined corpse that appeared shook the chains on its body and immediately roared. Its voice could penetrate the flesh, directly affecting the primordial spirit. With a roar, the refined corpse charged into the cultivators, swinging its body. The iron chains wrapped around it became its most lethal magical artifacts. As it swept through, the sound of wind howling echoed. A large number of cultivators retreated in the face of its assault. At this moment, the second refined corpse also emerged from the formation, roaring as it stepped forward, charging into the battlefield. As more and more refined corpses emerged from the formation, the situation on the battlefield instantly reversed. Especially the last three corpses, which emanated not purple-blue light, but silver and gold. The two silver-glowing refined corpses were a man and a woman. Though their expressions were still blank, their bodies were the size of normal humans, and they wore silver robes. While they still had chains on their bodies, these chains were only two, wrapped around their bodies. As soon as they stepped out, a wave of early pure Nirvana stage pressure radiated wildly in all directions. The final refined corpse could no longer be described as just a corpse. It was a middle-aged man dressed in a dragon robe and a tall crown, appearing as if he were a mortal emperor. There were no chains on his body, only 5 yellow paper talismans floating above his head, with flashes of lightning connecting them to him. A powerful aura of the 5 elements spread from him, and as Wang Lin saw this man in the dragon robe, he immediately felt the force of the 5 elements. The first thing that came to his mind was the red butterfly he had encountered years ago. 5 elements, spiritual body. Wang Lin quickly retreated. He knew that with his current cultivation, he could not have much impact in a battle of this magnitude between 2 star domains. Thus, he had always acted with the intention of self-preservation. If he could contribute, he would. If not, he would simply protect himself. I wonder where senior brother Qing Shui is now. He should be nearby. Wang Lin kept retreating, but the woman in the water-silk blue dress had no intention of letting him go. With a flick of her jade hand, a normal refined corpse immediately stepped forward, its eyes fixed on Wang Lin, suddenly charging after him. Wang Lin's expression darkened. If it were a mid-glimpse of Nirvana cultivator, he could win with his current body and divine arts. However, facing a late glimpse of nirvana, he would have to use all of his divine arts for a chance to win, and there were many variables in the situation. However, using all his divine arts in such a battle would be clearly unwise. Moreover, if he were injured, he would likely fall into a perilous situation. Wang Lin's plan was to fish in troubled waters, waiting for the opportunity to slip unnoticed into the moon-gaze beast and seize the ancient god infant's power inheritance. As he continued to retreat, the refined corpse roared and pursued him. The chains on its body flew through the air, violently clearing a path straight toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin's eyes flashed coldly, and his retreat became even faster, drawing closer to the sealed moon-gaze beast. From within, muffled roars could be faintly heard, echoing in the starry sky. Wang Lin didn't believe that the cultivators in the alliance could hold the moon-gaze beast. Once the moon-gaze beast was enraged, everything would collapse. This mere sealing formation would never be enough to contain it. In an instant, Wang Lin had already approached the massive black shell that sealed the moon-gazing beast. Patriarch Xun'er, along with many cultivators, was unfolding their divine arts and relentlessly attacking the black shell. Wang Lin's approach did not catch their attention. Meanwhile, the corpse being refined and chasing after Wang Lin was rapidly closing the distance. The iron chains wrapped around its body flung out a strand, sweeping horizontally toward Wang Lin. The deafening whistle of the chain filled his ears. A cold glint flashed in Wang Lin's eyes. Without changing his expression, he swiftly retreated just as the iron chain was about to strike him. He crashed into the black shell, enclosing the moon-gazing beast. The moment his body made contact with the black shell, a trace of ancient godly aura instinctively leaked from him and merged with the shell. In that very instant, the moon-gazing beast within the shell immediately sensed the ancient godly aura, triggering a wild frenzy. Its roar reverberated, shaking the heavens and earth. The rage of the moon-gazing beast was like the finger of an ancient god. The more enraged it became, the more powerful its divine arts grew. At that moment, a thunderous explosion rang out from the black shell, and cracks suddenly appeared as if an unimaginable force was erupting from within. In the blink of an eye, the black shell shattered. As it crumbled, a rough ancient god's finger shot out directly from the destruction. If anyone had underestimated the moon-gazing beast before, or hadn't given it enough attention, all those thoughts vanished with the collapse of the sealing black shell. Everything dissolved into nothingness, leaving only a soul-shaking awe. The black shell around the moon-gazing beast's body was now covered with massive cracks, which exploded apart with a resounding bang. Countless shards flew out, shrieking through the air. These fragments of the black shell contained immense impact force. As they hurtled forward, several cultivators failed to dodge in time and were struck by the shards, sending them flying in all directions, their bodies crumbling, blood spraying, and their souls unable to escape. Some cultivators were swept by the broken pieces of the black shell, instantly bisected. Blood vaporized into mist, filling the air with a horrifying spectacle. For a moment, the surroundings fell into silence, as if all eyes were fixed on this moment. Yet, amidst the stillness, a roar that seemed to come from an ancient era erupted from within the shattered black shell. The roar was infinite, like the roar of an ancient god. It pierced through the fabric of time and space, as if it had existed in the world since the beginning of time. The sound transformed into an endless shockwave. Within the shockwave, the finger of the ancient god suddenly emerged. The magnificence and splendor of that finger stretching out were indescribable, as if the very heavens and earth would collapse under its power. No force could resist the finger of the ancient god. Everything and everyone must perish with a single strike. The corpse being chased by Wang Lin also froze in place, momentarily stunned. With its limited intelligence, it experienced a brief moment of blankness, and the cost was the ancient god's finger coming straight at it. Boom. The moment the ancient god's finger shot out, it struck the refined corpse. The sound of violent crashes echoed as all the iron chains around the corpse shattered inch by inch. Its body, under the immense force, erupted black blood from its back, as if being endlessly pulled apart. Its purple-blue skin began to disintegrate. In the blink of an eye, its skin seemed to be peeled away, followed immediately by its flesh and bones being shattered. The corpse exploded into countless pieces of blood and flesh. This scene, though described slowly, happened in just a few breaths. The ancient god's finger didn't pause for a second, continuing its relentless assault. Wang Lin, who had been retreating, now rushed backward. His eyes flashed, and as he watched, his heart felt as if after the ancient god's finger, a towering ancient god stood, extending a hand, sweeping through the world with divine power and destroying everything in its path. The enormous body of the moon-gazing beast followed immediately after the ancient god's finger, charging out. Its endless tendrils writhed, releasing vast clouds of mist. Its elliptical body, with fierce eyes as bright as the full moon, met Wang Lin's gaze. In that instant, Wang Lin realized something was wrong. The moon-gazing beast's eyes were filled with clarity, with no trace of confusion. In fact, when Wang Lin looked into those eyes, he felt as if the moon-gazing beast was looking directly at him. With the moon-gazing beast's release, a powerful battle intent surged among the Luotian cultivators. The battle became turbulent, with the alliance sometimes gaining the upper hand, and at other times, Luotian seizing momentum. Now that the moon-gazing beast had reappeared, its immense body radiated a terrifying aura, immediately shaking the starry sky. The ancient god's finger, far from dissipating, was now accelerating rapidly, sweeping forward. Any cultivators who tried to block its path were immediately crushed, their bodies collapsing as they tried to get closer. Wang Lin had spent his life in slaughter, but the number of cultivators who died in this great battle far exceeded the ones he had killed throughout his life. This scale of war was something Wang Lin had never encountered before. The battle between the Vermilion Birdstar and the Immortal Remnant clan from years ago seemed insignificant in comparison to this moment. The situation reversed as the ancient god's divine ability, a single finger strike, howled through the air. As it struck, all the cultivators in its path collapsed without resistance. The ancient god's finger swept forward and headed straight for the Black Fiend Demon Venerable. The Black Fiend Demon Venerable among the Alliance cultivators' expression shifted slightly. Gritting his teeth, at the moment the ancient god's finger was about to strike, he opened his mouth and exhaled a thick mist. His hands quickly formed seals, and the mist immediately began to roll, transforming into a large black crane. The crane held a black spirit grass in its beak. Upon materializing, it immediately released the spirit grass, which began to grow wildly in an instant. Within moments, the spirit grass expanded to 1,000 zhang, a traditional unit of length, spreading outwards to form a protective barrier. When the ancient god's finger collided with the spirit grass barrier, a thunderous sound echoed across the battlefield. The spirit grass trembled and shattered into countless fragments, turning into black smoke that scattered into the air. The Black Fiend Demon Venerable's face turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as his body retreated. But with a swift motion of his right hand, he reached into the air and immediately drew out a wooden carving. The wooden sculpture was intricately carved, depicting a humanoid figure wrapped in plants, its face hidden by the vegetation that covered its entire body. As soon as the wooden carving was drawn, the Black Fiend Demon Venerable threw it forward without hesitation. A black light, capable of devouring all radiance, flickered from the carving. The figure in the sculpture seemed to come to life. The plants surrounding the figure began to squirm and move, quickly materializing as they rushed out of the sculpture. With howls rising from the figure, 500-foot-tall black flowers materialized from thin air around the sculpture. These eerie flowers released a strange energy. One of the flowers rushed toward the ancient god's finger, and its center split open, resembling a gaping mouth that spewed an extremely cold black aura. The remaining 4 flowers did not hesitate, tearing open their petals and releasing torrents of black mist. At the same time, the humanoid figure from the sculpture, its eyes glowing red, truly came to life. It extended its arms as if to embrace, and suddenly lunged forward, merging into the black mist. In an instant, the figure wrapped itself around the ancient god's finger, and black threads shot out from its body, spreading rapidly to cover the divine finger. Wang Lin, observing from afar, sneered coldly. If the ancient god's finger could be so easily countered, then the moon-gazing beast would not have been so arduously transported by the Luotian cultivators into the Alliance star domain. The moon-gazing beast should be the strongest weapon of the Luotian side in this battle. Wang Lin's gaze shifted to the towering ancient tree in the distance. This tree, it likely has more hidden power. Standing on it, I can sense something else within. Wang Lin's mind raced. This great battle between the 2 star domains was expanding his horizons endlessly. For him, this was extremely important. After all, his cultivation time was much shorter compared to those old monsters, and his experience in certain matters was lacking. This battle felt like a grand display of divine abilities and magical artifacts, allowing Wang Lin to rapidly absorb knowledge. increasing both his experience and understanding of the true strength of pure nirvana and shattered nirvana cultivators. Without this war, it would have been incredibly difficult for Wang Lin to comprehend this. At this moment, just as the Black Fiend Demon Venerable used his divine abilities and magical artifact to block the ancient god's finger, the remaining dozen or so refined corpses from the Alliance rushed forward, their roars growing louder. Especially the two silver refined corpses, which moved faster. However, even with these corpses combined, they were still not enough to stop the ancient god's finger. As the moon-gazing beast charged forward with a deafening roar, the sound was so intense that the starry sky trembled. Cultivators with insufficient cultivation immediately had to retreat to avoid injury. To others, the roar of the moon-gazing beast was just a scream, but to Wang Lin, it had a different meaning. His expression changed, and without hesitation, he formed seals with his hands. Numerous defensive barriers materialized in front of him, and the ancient god's great cauldron flickered around his body. He retreated quickly. As he withdrew, the ancient god's finger, which had been resisting the refined corpses and the Black Fiend Demon Venerable, suddenly shook and exploded. Boom. The self-detonation of the ancient god's finger technique was beyond description in terms of its immense power. The starry sky within a radius of tens of thousands of miles seemed to be torn open in that instant, with the sounds of screams echoing as countless cultivators were directly sucked into the shattered void of the sky, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. Countless cultivators on both sides were filled with terror and panic, hurriedly retreating, cursing their own lack of speed. Only the moon-gazing beast remained unharmed. As it charged in, its tentacles swept across, initiating a savage massacre. As for the Black Fiend Demon Venerable, at the center of the ancient god's finger explosion, blood spurted from his mouth. His body was violently thrown back, blood mist enveloping him. Despite his thousands of years of cultivation, he was now in a terrible state. His body was severely damaged, almost on the verge of collapse. At this moment, his face was filled with shock. In his entire life of cultivation, he had never encountered such a formidable force. Spitting another mouthful of blood, he fled desperately, his soul in a chaotic state. As for the more than 10 refined corpses, except for the silver corpses, the others were unable to resist the ancient god's finger explosion. They all collapsed, turning into flesh and blood, sucked into the shattered void. Even the two silver corpses were violently knocked away. Their iron chains shattered, and black blood gushed from their bodies. Among them, the beautiful female corpse headed straight toward Wang Lin. This kind of magical artifact belongs to me, Wang Lin. Wang Lin's eyes flashed. What he saw was not just the female corpse, but also a broken half-piece of wooden carving in the distance.